Often on my calls with clients, I'll share with them a strategy, and then I will tell them that they should hang on to that strategy for many of the future parenting challenges they're going to go through. Because although some of the strategies that I use are very specific to a particular age or a particular sleep challenge, I also share quite a few that are worth hanging on to for the long haul because they come in handy no matter what stage of parenting you are at or what stage your child is at in development. Well, after recording this latest episode where I share my strategy for managing parenting life when you've got a million fires that need to be put out, a million things that need fixing right now, whether it's naps or bedtime or meal times or how to manage the mess of being at home or any of these things. And it dawned on me that I have to take some of my own advice and use this strategy. So when I recorded this last week, I paid attention and realized that it was time to reboot this in my own life. So I've been using this strategy that I explore in this episode this week to make bedtimes better for my older kiddos. And it has paid off. It is all about where is my attention? What key piece do I want to change to make life a little bit easier for me, which makes it easier for my kids as well. So if you are intrigued and you're wondering, how do strategies from a sleep coach and occupational therapist transfer to teens or preteens? Have a listen. Here's the episode. Welcome to the Baby Sleep Connection, a podcast that explores baby sleep and more through the lens of attachment and development. I'm your host, Heather Boyd. I'm a mom of 3, an occupational therapist, and a certified infant and family sleep specialist. If you are a tired parent who wants to support your baby's sleep holistically, keep listening as we delve into approaches that go well beyond the usual strategies of wake windows and bedtime routines. Your baby's sleep is connected with so much more. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Baby Sleep Connection podcast. It's Heather Boyd, and we are doing a bit of a deep dive into one of the ideas that were explored in last episode, episode 14, with Dr. Warsh. One of the things that he really focused on in that interview and that he covers well in his book is this idea of making little changes. Now, at a time in your parenting where everything is feeling overwhelming, where everything feels like a priority, you might feel like you have a dozen fires to be putting out and you don't even know where to start. Sometimes just focusing on those tiny changes that really accumulate makes a difference. So I want to apply that to sleep and what it's going to look like for your parenting, to make little changes with sleep or little changes with your mindset or little changes with the way that you're approaching parenting or approaching how your day goes so that sleep and everything around and connected with sleep is a little bit easier. Because frankly, when everything feels like it is going to pot, you may not even know where to start. So with the examples that were brought up in the last episode, those were around making little changes to really build some momentum in helping the health of your child, whether the one example that he brought up was looking at labels. So let's bring this back to the reason that you found this podcast, and that was that it was around sleep. Now, I am pretty sure I told this story already, but I'm going to tell it again. It's a worthwhile story. There were points, well, I'll say there are points in my parenting where it feels like everything is just kind of chaotic. Nothing is feeling really organized or joy-filled. I'm losing patience. I'm thinking in particular when my kiddos were really young. And so nothing was feeling good. Everything was feeling what I like to describe as feeling clunky or sticky. Nothing was running smoothly in our lives. I had 3 little kiddos. I was at home full time with them, and it was just feeling really hard. And so I decided that I couldn't put all the fires out. I couldn't fix everything from meal times to wake up times to transitions to wanting them to spend more time in nature to doing more crafts to staying more organized to maybe even finding time to play the piano. I couldn't do it all at once. And I was finding I was getting short-tempered. I just wasn't feeling very fulfilled. And I knew that the job was for me to be able to shift that somehow. And I decided that I would focus on one thing, not all the things, just one thing. And so I decided that if I could just change how bedtime felt, not that it would be shorter, not that it would be beautiful, but just that I would feel better about bedtime and feel less guilty about rushing through the routine and being exhausted and being grumpy and having my kids resist the routine, that if I could just create a bedtime routine that felt really good, then that was huge progress. And if I could do it with bedtime, then I could kind of slowly do the same thing with other sticky or clunky parts of my day. And so I did. I started with bedtime only. And I thought, I started with this idea of what do I want it to feel like? Again, not so much what it was going to look like, but what did I want it to feel like? And I wanted it to feel connected. And I wanted it to be like the cherry on top of the day. If the day was ice cream, this was the cherry on top. And I remember so well thinking to myself, even if the whole rest of the day was horrendous, if I could just finish the day on a high note with them, that cherry on top, where they're feeling connected with me and they can fall asleep knowing that I love them and I'm there for them and that it's highly connected, then I get to go to bed feeling satisfied with that too. And so not all of my attention, of course, when you have all these things to do as a parent, it's not like you can only focus on one thing, but I put more of my attention on making sure that if I was not calm or pleasant or patient at any other time of the day, then darn it, I was going to be calm and pleasant and patient at bedtime. Like come hell or high water, I was going to show up in the way that I wanted to be as a parent at bedtime. And I don't know. I don't know what you're thinking about this, but I sure found that way less overwhelming than thinking that I had to change my entire persona, my entire mood, my entire approach to parenting throughout the entire day. Like, I think that would have been too much. Yes, that would be ideal, but at the time I didn't have it in me to make everything feel good. So by focusing on just the bedtime, I think it made the biggest difference in me being able to put all my energy there. I'm thinking it would be like if you were trying to give up coffee and you were just going to quit cold turkey. And instead you decided, I'm actually just going to drop my afternoon coffee. I can do that. I'm going to put my attention on that, and I'm not going to worry about the rest. I'm going to still have that cup of coffee. And I'm not, of course, suggesting any of you give up coffee if it is something that brings you joy, and a lot of you are going to need it. One of these days I'll do a little survey, find out how many of you are coffee drinkers versus tea drinkers. I know there are some strong opinions out there because my clients will tell me when I ask them about caffeine consumption. It's one of the things I ask on my intake. But anyway, whether you are a coffee drinker or not, you can imagine that choosing one time to give it up would be a little bit easier. And so I did that with bedtime. And at some point my kids said, Mom, Dad's fun during the day, but you're fun at night. And it wasn't that they were telling me I was an absolute train wreck during the day, although maybe I was. And it wasn't like my spouse was available all the time. He was working, but he was more playful during the day. And then I was showing up 110% fully in the way that I wanted to as a parent at bedtime. And it wasn't that they were telling me that my spouse was no good at bedtime. It's just that really focused attention on making it feel the way I wanted it to, which means it was going to feel better for my kids too. That was the feedback I got from them. They were old enough to articulate that, but it was loud and clear that my attention on making this better paid off. So what I want to do, I'm going to bring up another example too of how so often when we are trying to fix things, and I get this with clients all the time. I have a few other examples I'll run through as well, but I know someone who is very good at plant identification. We're talking gardening now, but hear me out with this analogy. I am tempted, if I want to learn plants, to like grab the big manual of plant identification and start like flipping through it, trying to learn all of it, or walking through a forest trail, seeing something, trying to identify it, learn everything about it, and then move a little bit further on the trail and find something else. Her advice that she received when she was learning was to pick one plant a month, just one a month. And at first, like if you apply that to parenting, just fix one thing a month or make one thing better a month, you're never going to get anywhere. I want you to remember what you heard from last week's episode when Dr. Warsh was talking about those incremental changes add up, right? Those little small changes. So one plant a month that you learn really well, by the end of the year, you are going to be a pro at 12 different plants. And year after year, that's going to accumulate, and you're going to remember them better because you've given yourself the time to really immerse yourself. So yes, this is not a gardening podcast either, and I don't know my plants very well at all, but that analogy I think still fits in terms of just really understanding that these things really do accumulate, and it does take time, and it's worth going slow and steady. So you might be thinking, well, again, how does this apply to sleep? But I want to give you a few scenarios, right? The first might be, and this may resonate with you, you share that your baby is taking really short naps, that it's taking longer to get them down for a nap than they are sleeping, that your daughter's up 5 times a night and bedtime is all over the place. She's up really early in the morning, and breastfeeding used to work to help settle her, but it's not working anymore and you don't have any tools. That's a lot of fires to put out, right? And so think about if that is sounding like you, and I'm going to guess there's somebody out there that is like, oh my goodness, how did she know? It's because I've been there. Take it slow and pick the one thing that feels sticky or clunky that you can actually tackle first. These things are all connected. There's a reason I've called this the Baby Sleep Connection podcast. Everything is connected. And so if you start knocking down one domino in that whole stack, you're going to make progress. But you might be thinking, well, my kids are older. It's not, our scenario is a little bit different. So maybe it's that your kiddo is refusing to nap and is really grumpy by the time they get to bedtime. If you put bedtime earlier, then she is awake for 2 hours in the middle of the night. If you put her to bed late, then she's super upset and screaming. And by the way, she's also really picky with meal times, and she's always snacking. And by the time mealtime comes, she won't sit and eat. Or getting her out the door on time for daycare has been terrible. And then after daycare, you can't even make dinner because a lot of attention and connection is needed. And so nothing feels like it's going smoothly. So in this scenario, kiddo is older, there are different things going on, but the challenge is the same. Lots of areas that don't feel like they're going well. Now for you personally as a parent, and I know this is some of you as well, because I go through this as well, if everything for your parenting and for your life is feeling really disorganized and you don't get any time for yourself, and as a result, you end up feeling short-tempered and impatient, you're thinking about weaning, but then you also feel guilty about ending the weaning relationship. You're not getting a good night's sleep because either your kiddos are waking you up or you're feeling guilty that you were short-tempered that day and you're going through all the ways that you were a bad parent today. And you think if they could just cooperate a little bit more or make it a little bit easier, if you got more time to yourself, then everything would feel better, but you just can't figure out how to do that. So another example, right, of several different fires that you're trying to put out, and it can be easiest if you just focus on the one. So how can we do that? Well, I want to give you 3 steps to really hone in on how to make small incremental changes, whether it's with sleep, whether it's with meal times, whether it's transitions out the door in the morning, that are going to allow you to focus on the things that you have control over, to really hone in on one piece of this entire dynamic, because it's a lot. There's a lot going on for you right now. Then let's figure out how to do this. So there are 3 steps that I want you to consider. And the first is seemingly simple. Start somewhere. Start somewhere. I've alluded already to the preferences I have for starting where something is really sticky or clunky. Maybe it's all feeling sticky or clunky. Pick one thing that rises to the top as, if this changed for me, this would really make a difference. Now, it's about where you're putting your attention, right? In my example, with everything feeling like it was just not going so well, I focused on bedtime routine. I thought if I can end the day, then I will feel less guilty. My kids will feel like that last little bit of connection at the end of the day before separation through sleep would help them out as well. So I chose that, but it's your choice. Just put the attention somewhere. If you're not sure, choose something, some part of the day or some activity or some action that you can focus your attention on. Sometimes that can be helpful to choose the hardest time, so that clunkiest or stickiest time where you're like, ugh, this is my least favorite part. Let's see if I can make this better. Because if I can make this better and it's no longer the least favorite part, then that will feel a lot better. But the other thing to do, because you're tired, you don't have a lot of bandwidth, you don't have a lot of energy, choose something easy. That's another alternative. Choose something that's really clear to you what you could do to make that easier. Whether it's waking up at a consistent time in the morning, or whether it's just to let go of the contact naps for now so that you know when your baby is getting to bedtime that they've got the daytime sleep that they need to make it to bedtime without being overtired or without having less clear sleep signals because they're just not feeling as good in their body. So just focus on the one thing that's going to make a difference, whether it's the clunkiest thing or perhaps the easiest thing or somewhere in between. The second step is to make a commitment. Now, I know this is not a stage of parenting where you are setting lofty life goals. Maybe you are, but you might be feeling a bit discouraged that you're not meeting those. I believe I told the story of thinking that on mat leave I would learn guitar. So those lofty goals may not be in reach right now. But we can still make a commitment to that one area that we want to focus attention on that will make life easier. And notice I'm not getting really specific here because some of these things aren't about what is happening with sleep. It's about the whole dynamic. Sleep is often the scapegoat. It's the thing that hurts the most, so we start focusing all our attention on it, but it could be something else entirely. It could be that you want to start providing healthy snacks, or that you want to sit down on the floor in the afternoon to focus on play with one of your kiddos. You know, just the 5 minutes that Dr. Laura Markham, if any of you are aware of her work, talks about, just 5 to 10 minutes of focused playtime with your kiddos. And if you're not doing that, it can feel overwhelming to think about that. So focusing your attention on that one thing. That really comes down to how are we feeling about how this day and these nights are going for us, and is there a way to feel better about this? And if we're feeling better, our kiddos are inevitably feeling better too. Now, what's the last step? Step number 3. Well, if you've chosen where you're going to focus your attention, and then you've made a commitment, and actually I'm going to back up a little bit and talk about that commitment again. Often when I'm working with families and we're looking at changing something, whether it's changing the timing of bedtime or changing how their baby is falling asleep or changing even the self-talk that you have about how sleep is going, it can be really valuable to make a commitment for at least 3 days. I would say when we're changing something with sleep, it takes at least 3 days. With mindset, it's going to be an ongoing process, an ongoing journey. But to make a time commitment as well, that you're going to make a concerted effort to do certain things to move towards what you envision as being a better place to land than where you are now. And so that third step is to take action. We could have all the wishful thinking in the world about bedtime being more pleasant or about morning routine being less chaotic, but until we actually take action, it's unlikely that anything is going to move forward with it. So when it comes to taking action, we're going to think really small. You are not going to list out all the 10 things that you need to do. You're going to focus on one change at a time. I'm thinking back now to when I rebooted our bedtime. What was it that I focused on? And I can't remember the details. I wasn't journaling. I don't have I don't have a clear memory of what I focused on, but I remember focusing on the feeling that I wanted us to have at bedtime. So I imagine that part of it was that I stopped rushing through bedtime routine. Let's play this out. If I only focused on not rushing bedtime, so that I was slowing down and really enjoying and listening to my kiddos and savoring the cuddles and savoring what they were telling me and giving them time to tell their stories. If all I did was focus on slowing down, that could be it for now. That's the one action. And then once I get a little bit of practice with slowing down and paying attention and being present, and that's feeling pretty good, then I can move on to what is the other just little step that I can take that will change things incrementally, and that those little steps are going to add up. And so really, when it comes down to it, I want you to take away from this episode, you don't need to do it all tonight. Whatever problems that you're facing, you don't need to figure all the pieces out tonight. Just pick one little problem, one little place to focus, and then pick one little step within that to move forward. Obviously, this extends way beyond sleep to almost anything related to parenting. And it comes down really, I think, when I think again about the importance of how I was feeling at bedtime and how I wanted it to feel different. It didn't have to look a certain way, although I did have to figure out what could it look like that would get me there. But it really is about doing the one thing and then being the kind of parent that can follow through on that commitment and take action to move forward. If you're finding that you are feeling frustrated and frazzled and you have way too many fires to put out and you're not sure where to start, starting with these 3 steps is a great step. If getting support to do this, one other step that you could take is to reach out and book a call with me. I do free calls to walk through with parents what the challenge is that they're seeing in sleep, what their key goals are, and how I might be able to help you. So you can go to familysleep.ca/contact to book that free call. It's 20 minutes with me to explore what is happening with sleep in your household and whether I'm the right fit to support you. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I look forward to connecting with you on the next one. And I would love you to reach out. If there was something in this episode that resonated with you, then drop me an email. My email will be in the show notes. And I'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I do hope that you found the information and perspectives in this podcast episode helpful to you as you navigate your baby's sleep development. Of course, this podcast provides general information and it isn't tailored to your family's reality or the specific needs of your baby. If you're concerned about your baby's sleep or health, be sure to reach out to your healthcare provider. If you're feeling exhausted and overwhelmed and you need a place to feel nurtured and reassured, you can find me on Instagram at familysleep.ca. Until next episode, look for the connections that support you and your baby.